In this video, I'm ranking every open world sci-fi game I have fully completed. Not just finished, but 100%ed. Every quest, every collectible, every achievement, every last thing the developers buried in a cave 3 biomes deep. To be clear, this list includes both fully open world games and what I would classify as partially open world. Games with large explorable regions and non-linear structures, but not a seamless world map. That's why you'll see games like Jedi Survivor here, but not Knights of the Old Republic. Amazing game, just not open world by design. Each title is judged on 6 criteria: world design and immersion, exploration and traversal, sci-fi narrative strength, combat and build depth, side content density, and how satisfying the full completion experience really was. Now, I already know that some of you are going to rage about where your favorite game landed, and that's fine. Making people mildly upset about video games is my second favorite thing in the world, right behind 100% completing them. Now, let's get nerdy. This is what it looks like when ambition outruns execution. Deus Ex: The Fall wants to be a fully blooded entry in the franchise. Conspiracies, augmentations, stealth, player choice, but it never sheds its mobile roots. Every system is there in theory, but none of them land with any weight. The world is flat, both in layout and tone. Hubs are small, segmented, and lifeless. There's almost no reason to explore beyond grabbing loot that really impacts your build. Side content, what little exists, is quite forgettable, a string of errands with no narrative consequence. Combat is stiff, gunplay lacks punch, stealth is rudimentary at best, enemies follow simple patterns, and the cover system is clunky enough to make aggression feel safer than infiltration. Augments return from human revolution, but their utility is barely tested. You upgrade because you can, not because the game asks you to. The story is where it might be salvaged somehow, but even that falls flat. Ben Saxon is fine, but the voice acting is wooden and the writing lacks the philosophical sharpness that the series is known for. Dialogue is short, choices barely ripple, and the game ends before it feels like it began. From a 100% perspective, the experience is mercifully short, but that's the best thing you can say. The achievements are thin, the gameplay never evolves, and the finale is just missing. The Fall doesn't just rank last on my list, it also earns it by forgetting what Deus Ex is actually supposed to be. Atomfall feels like an atmospheric pitch that was never given the appropriate time to bake. There's a strong tonal foundation here: post-nuclear Britain, Cold War paranoia, rural decay, but none of it ever coheres into meaningful gameplay. The result is a hollow experience that gestures at depth while offering little beneath the surface. Exploration is the central loop, but the world is shallow. Interiors repeat, points of interest rarely pay off. You might stumble on a creepy house or abandoned installation, only to find some loot containers and a single note. Traversal feels slow and unrewarding, and backtracking through empty terrain becomes a chore fast. Combat is basic, guns lack feedback, stealth is half implemented, and AI is inconsistent. You can go loud or sneaky, but neither path is truly satisfying. There's no buildcraft to speak of, perks or minor gear progression is linear, and most encounters blur together. From a 100% standpoint, the achievement list is light but uninspired. There are few secrets, no real alternate routes or outcomes, and no systems to master, just boxes to tick. Atomfall is this low down on the list not because it's broken, but because it's empty. Compared to even a flawed game like Crackdown, which at least commits to its chaos, Atomfall feels like walking through a ghost of a better idea. Crackdown is the junk food of the open world design. It's loud, weightless, and fun for a few hours until the repetition hits. The moment-to-moment gameplay has its charm. You leap over buildings, explode cars, and collect orbs like a man possessed. But once the novelty wears off, there's very little left to hold on to. The world is paper thin. It's not really meant to be explored. It's meant to be climbed. Verticality is the entire identity of the map, and while the agility orb system is a solid motivator at first, it quickly becomes compulsive rather than rewarding. You're chasing blips, not discoveries. Combat is dumb in the way early sandbox game often can be. Lock-on shooting, explosive chain reactions, brainless AI. It works, but it never evolves. You don't develop strategies, you just get stronger weapons and throw more grenades. The achievement list is one of the few things that tries to stretch the experience, encouraging stunts, full clearances, and co-op gameplay. But the game isn't deep enough to make that journey satisfying. It's a long climb to a view you've already seen. Crackdown ranks low because there's nothing to uncover, no narrative, no meaningful side content, just chaos in a box. Fun in bursts, but hollow to complete. There's a scale here, and that is absolutely no question. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 spans continents, timelines, and entire existential frameworks. But the sheer volume of content works against it, especially when chasing 100%. It's a game obsessed with systems, yet allergic to restraint. The world is massive, visually striking, and filled with nooks, but the actual exploration loop is overly gamified. Enemies respawn constantly, resource nodes litter every path, and quest design leans hard into fetches, fights, and flavorless objectives. The mechanical sprawl, chain attacks, classes, fusions, combos is enormous, but lacks cohesion. Narratively, it is also quite ambitious. The story tries to reconcile past timelines, philosophical dilemmas, and character arcs, but ends up bloated. Companion depth is strong, but pacing suffers. Emotional beats hit, but they're buried under hours of filler content. From a 100% perspective, this game is exhausting. Side quests are everywhere, but few are memorable. Class mastery becomes grindy, collectibles respawn endlessly, and the post-game asks you to engage with systems that were already overcooked in the first half. Compared to something like Star Wars Outlaws, which is shorter and simpler but at least focused, Xenoblade 3 buckles under its own ambition. There's greatness here, buried under too many layers. Outlaws has one job: deliver a scoundrel fantasy in a galaxy far, far away. And it kind of does. The characters are charming, and the heists are flashy, and the presentation quite polished. But the more you explore, the more you realize this galaxy only goes skin deep. The open world structure is classic Ubisoft. Regional maps, enemy camps, collectibles, and a checklist quest structure. It's not inherently bad, but it's overly familiar. The planets lack identity, activities repeat, and while Kay and Nyx are solid leads, their journey feels on rails, no matter how much you wander. Combat and stealth are serviceable, but unspectacular. Gunplay is floaty, enemy variety thin, and stealth is built for set pieces, not systems. Vehicle segments and space travel add flair, but they're rarely more than cutscene transitions or heavily guided sequences. The achievement list is bloated. You'll clear outposts, max reputation, and repeat minigames long past the point of fun. And none of it adds meaningfully to the narrative. You'll see everything in the first 20 hours. The next 20 are just cleanup. Compared to Rage, for example, a game with its own structural issues but a more distinctive tone, Outlaws is too safe, too clean. It delivers the fantasy, but not the freedom. There's an alternate universe where Rage becomes id Software's post-apocalyptic answer to Fallout. Tight gunplay, handcrafted zones, and a world teetering on the edge. Unfortunately, in this hypothetical timeline, Rage is mostly a missed opportunity. It has the bones of something great, but very little connective tissue. The shooting is phenomenal. That's the one thing that works. Crisp weapons, smart enemy animations, and a kinetic feel that few studios can match. But every other system feels either unfinished or borrowed from better games. The open world is barren, traversal is lifeless, and quest design is aggressively forgettable. Narrative threads exist, but they barely tie together. The game sets up factions, themes, and mysteries only to rush through them or drop them entirely. Dialogue is stifled, choices non-existent, and the final mission cuts off right as things start to get interesting. 100% completion reveals how much padding there is. Races, collectibles, minigames, none of them expand the world. They're just there to extend runtime, and the UI is actively hostile to tracking progress. Compared to the next game on this list, Mad Max, which at least commits to its gameplay loop, Rage is all systems, no soul. The shooting is great, everything else is scaffolding. There's no doubt that Mad Max understands exactly what it wants to be. A car combat survival sandbox wrapped in grit and gasoline. It never pretends to be reactive or narratively rich, but what it does with absolute confidence. That focus is what elevates it above structurally similar games like Rage or Clear Sky. The open world is harsh but atmospheric. Sandstorms roll in and visibility drops. Enemy camps dot the map like tumors. Scavenging feels essential, and every upgrade to Max or the Magnum Opus feeds into that survival loop, making traversal and combat feel necessary for progression rather than a grind. Melee brawling is serviceable. It rides the Arkham counter-based rhythm, but it's weightier. Car combat, though, is the real star. Dynamic, destructive, and deeply satisfying. It's rare for a game to make vehicles this central and this fun. The game's main flaw is repetition. The outpost loop wears thin, side objectives blend together, and narrative moments are sparse. And while the final hours try to ramp up stakes, they arrive too late. From a 100% standpoint, Mad Max is coherent. You're working through something, towards something, and completion enhances your power. It's not just a checklist. Clear Sky is the awkward middle child of the original Stalker trilogy, an ambitious prequel with new systems that mostly serve to frustrate. It tries to evolve the formula with faction warfare, weapon degradation, and expanded AI behavior, but in practice it creates more friction than depth. The world is still the zone, which means it's worth exploring. Atmosphere remains the franchise's strongest card. Decaying towns, irradiated forests, and unpredictable anomalies all sell the idea of a hostile living world. But level design is more constrained than in Shadow of Chernobyl, and movement is constantly undercut by bugs, invisible barriers, or bad pathing. Combat is brutal, not in a good way. Accuracy is a dice roll, enemies sponge bullets or down you in 2 hits, and weapons jam constantly. Repair systems are opaque. It's survival, yes, but rarely satisfying. The faction war mechanic could be brilliant. Instead, it feels like you're constantly firefighting broken logic. Bases flip ownership off screen, allies disappear, and objectives override each other. Trying to stabilize a region is maddening, especially for 100% completion. Where the previously ranked Mad Max embraces structure, Clear Sky feels like a mod glued onto a fragile core. And for all of these flaws, it is still so much fun to explore. Fallout 4 is a contradiction. Mechanically, it's the most refined Bethesda Fallout. Smoother combat, better movement, more flexible crafting. But narratively, it's the most shallow. The game sacrifices role-playing depth in favor of modular design, and that decision defines the entire experience. The open world is dense and well-designed. Boston and surrounding ruins are packed with locations, secrets, and vertical layers. Exploration is satisfying, gunfights are fluid, and the game loop, loot, build, shoot, repeat, is polished to a sheen. But that polish comes at a cost. Dialogue choices are reduced to tonal presets. Your character is fully voiced but rarely reactive. Quests rarely branch, faction outcomes are rigid, and there's no room to truly inhabit a role, only to choose which pre-written path to follow. The settlement system is a polarizing addition. Some love it, others ignore it. From a completionist angle, it's a grind-heavy distraction. Managing dozens of settlements, happiness scores, and inventory logistics can be tedious and unrewarding. Similarly, achievement design leans heavily on busy work. Clear every location, build every item, craft every mod. It's not challenging, it's just long. What separates Fallout 4 from the entries below it is its technical competence. It plays well, it runs well, but for all its systems, it has little to say. By the time you finish Borderlands the pre-sequel, the subtitle starts to feel like a warning. This is a mid-tier entry awkwardly wedged between the more memorable Borderlands games. Where the shooting remains serviceable and the loot intact, the moment-to-moment experience struggles to stand on its own. The low-gravity traversal and oxygen mechanics add some novelty at first, but quickly devolve into a chore. The moon setting, though visually distinct, lacks the environmental diversity or narrative intrigue of Pandora. The writing leans hard into slapstick and meme humor, and while that might hit for some, it wears thin long before the credits roll. Narratively, it's both prequel and epilogue, giving Handsome Jack an origin story while also undercutting the impacts of its events with framing devices. The playable characters are fine, but lack meaningful arcs. Side quests are forgettable, and the main plot feels like filler between gunfights. From a completionist lens, the achievements follow the usual Borderlands formula. Kill count, exploration, quest cleanup, but there's little mechanical depth or discovery in this process, just repetition. Saints Row 4 is a parody wrapped in a parody wearing a superhero cape. It's loud, absurd, and constantly trying to out-meme itself. And yet there's a strange sincerity buried in the noise. From a gameplay standpoint, it's barely a GTA-like anymore. It's a full-blown power fantasy with leveling abilities and alien invasions. Traversal is the highlight. Super sprinting across buildings, leaping over towers, and gliding through skylines feel liberating. The game is a recycled steelport, but it's given new life by how quickly you can move through it. Exploration becomes a playground for mobility, not just a checklist. Combat is explosive and varied. The arsenal includes dubstep guns, black hole launchers, and telekinetic powers, none of which are deep, but all of which are fun. The tone is ridiculous, but the systems support it. From a 100% perspective, the game is surprisingly generous. Collectibles feed into upgrades, side missions are short but distinct, minigames are silly but rarely overstay their welcome. It's quantity over quality, yes, but the volume is tuned for enjoyment. Saints Row 4 outranks the prequel because it knows exactly what it is. It's messy, but it commits. And that makes it a better game to fully complete, even if it never takes itself seriously. Now for the most recent entry on this list. Death Stranding 2 is the kind of game that defies clean classification. Part courier sim, part surreal narrative, part mechanical art installation. And yet, as a completionist experience, it's oddly compelling. Hideo Kojima may be the only designer who could make delivering cargo across ruins feel like a pilgrimage. Traversal is still the star. Every terrain choice matters, every loadout is a puzzle, and the expanding regions in DS2 introduces even more environmental storytelling. Remnants of civilization now half consumed by beach phenomena. It's haunting and beautiful, even when you are ankle deep in mud. Narratively, it's indulgent. Long monologues, cryptic metaphors, dream logic, but there's an emotional payoff, especially if you played the first game. Character arcs resolve, questions are answered, and Kojima's weirdness is more coherent this time. Combat is much improved. Encounters feel less like intrusions and more like designed set pieces. Gear options are broader, stealth matters again, and the BT threat, while familiar, still creates tension. Achievements demand mastery. You'll need to S rank, max connections, full map coverage, and rare deliveries. It's not short, but it is quite satisfying. The game respects your investment, even when it's being intentionally opaque. This is where the Stalker series earned its reputation. Shadow of Chernobyl is clunky, unfriendly, and often unfair, but it's also one of the most impressive, atmospheric open-world experiences in sci-fi gaming. It trades comfort for authenticity, and that design philosophy defines every system. The Zone is a masterpiece. It doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't explain itself. But every corner of its irradiated wasteland tells a story. Abandoned labs, burnt out villages, fields of anomalies. Each space invites risk and rewards curiosity. There's no minimap spam, no quest markers. Just you, the Geiger counter, and whatever you brought to survive. Combat is raw. Ballistics are punishing, armor matters, weapons degrade. It forces careful planning and tension with every pull of the trigger. And while it's not a loot-heavy RPG, it makes every bullet and every medkit feel valuable. The story is fragmented and strange, delivered through documents, dialogue, and discovered locations. The multiple endings aren't deeply reactive, but they do reflect the choices you made in subtle ways. 100% completion is difficult to define here. There's no achievement list in the traditional sense, but uncovering every lab, anomaly, and secret stash feels like a genuine accomplishment. Deus Ex Invisible War is often seen as the black sheep of the Deus Ex family, and from a 100% completion standpoint, that reputation is probably well earned. The core ideas here are player choice, faction tension, narrative ambiguity, but they are watered down by small maps, oversimplified systems, and a console-first design that chokes the series' depth. Levels feel like glorified hallways. Exploration is minimal, often gated behind load zones or genetic keypads. Hubs are lifeless, looting is shallow, and the lack of verticality, one of Deus Ex's signature traits, removes much of the spatial intrigue. There's nothing surprising around the corner, just another locked door and a plasma rifle. The atmosphere is still strong. The greys and neons of post-apocalyptic America and the fractured globe feels like a logical extension of the original world. The writing leans into moral ambiguity, and while the dialogue lacks punch, the ideas it wrestles with, control, faith, autonomy, are still classic Deus Ex material. From a 100% perspective, it's a short and clean run. Most content is accessible in a single playthrough, and there's little filler. And despite the mechanical regression, it's more cohesive and rewarding than lower tier entries like Borderlands, the pre-sequel, or Rage. Borderlands 3 is a game of extremes. Mechanically, it's the sharpest entry in the series, tight gunplay, fluid movements, and wildly diverse weapons, but narratively, it's an endurance test. Jokes fly at you with machine gun frequency, most of them missing, and the story tries so hard to matter, it forgets how to breathe. From a gameplay loop perspective, this is peak Borderlands. Each planet has its own aesthetic, encounter design is solid, and bosses feel tuned for co-op and solo alike. Build variety is impressive, with skill trees that actually support distinct playstyles. That's a step up from both Borderlands and the pre-sequel. where most classes eventually blur together. The problem is everything else. Dialogue is non-stop, unskippable, and frequently insufferable. Characters shout out over one another, quip through tragedy, and mug the camera in scenes that never earn their weight. Side quests fare much better, often delivering fun mechanics or isolated stories, but the tone never stops trying to be louder than its own content. From a completionist angle, the achievement list is hefty but reasonable. Side content is spread across the galaxy, and while the grind is real, it's structured. You always know what you're working towards. This is where the loot shooter began, and despite its age, Borderlands holds up better than expected, especially if you value purity of loot. There's no pretense here. You're shooting things, they drop numbers, and eventually you shoot bigger things for bigger numbers. The appeal is simple, and that simplicity is also its ceiling. Pandora isn't a world so much as a backdrop, a dusty playground filled with bandits, skags, and crates. There's almost no reactivity, little story structure, and the side quests are bare bones as they come. But the rhythm of clearing zones, upgrading gear, and pushing your level cap still works. Combat is functional, guns feel distinct, if not complex, and skill trees offer minor variations. And by the halfway point, most builds converge into efficient DPS machines. It's satisfying but shallow. From a completionist view, the game is surprisingly lean. The achievement list is basic, with no trick objectives, no secrets to unearth. You're done when you've swept the map, finished the side quests, and maxed your level. That might sound boring, but it's honest. Unlike Borderlands 3, which at times can feel like it's burying clarity under the clutter. Borderlands sits above the sequel because of its focus. It may be narrow, but at least it knows exactly what it is. Stalker 2: Heart of Chernobyl is an unfinished marvel, beautiful, broken, and strangely compelling. It's a game that wants to deliver the ultimate zone experience, and in some ways it does. But from a 100% perspective, it's a minefield, both literally and structurally. The world is incredible, dense, eerie, and reactive. Anomalies flicker through the abandoned towns, mutants lurk in fog-choked forests, side quests come at you unprompted. And there's a sense of chaos here that few games manage. And when it works, it's absolutely intoxicating. But that when is doing a lot of the work. Quests break, dialogue loops, key progression flags don't fire, the map design, while atmospheric, often leads to dead ends, clipping hazards, or unclear objectives. It's survival horror in the ways the devs probably didn't intend. Combat is brutal and unforgiving. Ammo is scarce. Enemies snipe you from cover. Healing is slow. Buildcraft exists, but it's limited by bugs and vague upgrade systems. And every firefight is tense, and not always in the good way. The real issue for completionists here is stability. Some achievements don't trigger, some questlines, at least at launch, wouldn't finish. There's potential here for Stalker 2 to be one of the best and most immersive survival sims ever made, but it needs time. Star Wars Jedi: Fallen Order is a classical case of rough edges wrapped around a solid core. It's the first real attempt at a Dark Souls-inspired Star Wars game, and while it doesn't always stick the landing, there's enough here in tone, pacing, and combat to make the journey worthwhile. The level design leans heavily on the Metroidvania template. Worlds are segmented but dense, with locked paths that slowly opens as your ability grows. Exploration is rewarding early on, secret upgrades, lore echoes, hidden fights, but revisiting old zones becomes tedious. Fast travel doesn't exist, and traversal grows clunky over time. Combat is deliberate, reactive, and it's best in one-on-one duels. Larger encounters can get messy, and the lock-on system fights you more than the enemies do. Still, parrying stormtroopers, dueling inquisitors, and force-pushing bounty hunters off cliffs all feel amazing. Narratively, the game plays it safe. Cal is serviceable, and the supporting cast has strong moments, but most arcs end exactly where you'd expect. The real draw is tone. That sense of being a lone Jedi hunted across the galaxy in decline. 100% completing Fallen Order is a mixed bag, with collectibles offering cosmetic fluff and secrets eventually running dry. The core gameplay loop remains engaging, and fortunately so for the duration of its runtime. This is truly where the series hit its stride. Borderlands 2 refined the loot loop, sharpened the humor, and finally built a world worth exploring. Even if it's still a carnival ride more than a living setting, as a complete package, it delivers. Gunplay is tight, enemy design is varied, bosses feel tuned for solo and co-op gameplay, skill trees feel meaningfully distinct, and legendary gear drops spark real excitement. Compared to the first game's static encounters, BL2 evolves, and that's a big deal. The writing is decisive. Handsome Jack is a standout villain, but the tone often veers from clever to cringeworthy in seconds. Side quests include some of the series' best gags and worst excesses. You're laughing one moment and groaning the next. Exploration still follows the series' segmented structure. Small maps, linked by fast travel, but environmental diversity helps. From acid marshes to desert skyscrapers to icy caverns, Pandora finally feels like more than a wasteland. From a 100% perspective, this is the best balance the franchise strikes. That's a lot to do, raid bosses, challenges, side quests, DLC, but it's well distributed and doesn't demand endless grind. Borderlands 2 ranks higher than its predecessors and successors because it actually earns your time. It may not surprise you, but it keeps you engaged, and in this series, that's rare. This is possibly my hottest take in this video. In my opinion, Andromeda isn't a bad game. It's a disappointing one for sure. The bones are strong, fluid combat, a functional exploration loop, and the promise of a new galaxy to call home. But every part of the experience feels like chasing potential that it never truly manifests. The combat is the standout. Jetpack mobility, real-time powers, cover shooting. It's the best the franchise has ever felt mechanically. Class flexibility and build variety are also top-notch, and encounters are tuned for mobility and aggression. It's a shame the rest of the game just can't keep up. Exploration aims high, with multiple open-world planets to scan, mine, and settle, but each zone suffers from scale and bloat. Objectives feel checklist fillers. Environmental storytelling is minimal, and traversal, while fast, becomes repetitive. The story is unfortunately also quite flat. The central mystery fizzles out, and most of the cast feels like drafts of beta characters. Loyalty missions help, but none of it carries the emotional weight of Shepard's crew. It's all functional, none of it is essential. Unfortunately though, 100% completion is a grind. Side content lack payoffs, and achievements are numerous but rarely interesting. Forbidden West is stunning. The art direction, animation, and creature design, all world class. But for all of its technical brilliance, this is a game constantly at war with itself. It wants to be a sleek open world shooter and a grand sci-fi epic, but it only ever halfway succeeds at either. Traversal is improved from Zero Dawn, with climbing systems and gliders making the world feel more connected. The sandbox is rich with biomes and verticality, and there is genuine pleasure in finding a way to reach every vista, ruin, and collectible. Combat is mechanically dense. You juggle ammo types, armor strips, trap placement, and status effects while dodging robo saber-tooths. On hard difficulties, it's brilliant. On normal, it can feel like busy work. Still, the mechanical core is strong, especially against the series' awe-inspiring machines. The narrative stretches thin. The stakes escalate beyond the setting's weight, and the tonal whiplash is unfortunately quite frequent. The supporting cast tries, but Aloy carries too much, and her arc treads familiar ground. From a completionist view, Forbidden West is generous, but bloated. Too many collectibles, too many minor quests, and too little narrative return. It's a technical marvel, but completion feels like consumption, not discovery. Of the original trilogy, Stalker Call of Pripyat is the most refined. Not the most atmospheric, not the most iconic, but the one that best understands how to turn the zone into a system-driven experience. Where Shadow of Chernobyl thrived on mood and mystery, Call of Pripyat builds a fragile structure of factional alliances, quest chains, and dynamic AI atop that foundation. Exploration is slow and deliberate. You're not just ticking off map markers, you're navigating a hostile, unscripted world that genuinely resists you. Weather, radiation, and enemy patrols shape every journey. Secrets aren't handed out, they're found through careful scavenging and a healthy respect for danger. Combat still leans towards survival horror, but it's more stable now. Weapons handle better, gear progression is much clearer, and encounters are less random and more tuned. There's a tangible arc from under-equipped wanderer to hardened operator, and that growth feels well earned. 100% completion is non-traditional but compelling. There's no achievement list to chase, but uncovering every anomaly, clearing every lab, and surveying every emission feels like real progress. Unlike many open world games, this one never wastes your time. Every single step feels like it truly matters. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is bigger, better, and more polished than Fallen Order, but that scale introduces its own issues. This is a game that wants to be more than just Dark Souls with a lightsaber. It wants to be an open-world action-adventure, a character-driven narrative, and a collectible laden completionist hunt. It succeeds at some, and unfortunately stumbles at others. The biggest win is traversal. Mounts, grappling hooks, air dashes. The mobility tools here are excellent. Kobo in particular feels like a genuine playground of verticality and layered exploration. Backtracking is smoother and secrets are more interesting, making the world feel truly livable. Combat adds new stances and depth, but pacing can be uneven. Boss fights shine, trash mobs don't. Difficulty spikes can feel artificial, and especially when checkpoint placement undercuts tension. Narratively, the game is stronger. Cal is more fleshed out, companions get their moments, and the central mystery has actual weight. It's not quite Mass Effect, but the best Star Wars storytelling outside of the film series in years. From a completionist view, the cracks unfortunately do start to show. Too many collectibles, cosmetic fluff, reused puzzles. It's better than Fallen Order, but not quite as tight. This is where it all started, and while Horizon Zero Dawn shows some seams today, it remains one of the best executions of the Ubisoft open world formula. What sets it apart is its setting. A world of tribal societies and ancient machines, wrapped into a mystery that is genuinely compelling. The world is gorgeous, diverse, handcrafted, and rewarding to explore. Each new zone introduces distinct machine types, biomes, and vertical challenges. Climbing tall necks to reveal the map may be formulaic, but it never gets old, because the art direction is capable of carrying it. Combat is where Zero Dawn shines. There's no shooting, just dissecting. Stripping armor plates, targeting weak points, deploying traps. Against high-level machines, it becomes a dance of timing, positioning, and loadout strategy. Narratively, the game takes its time, but the payoff is strong. Aloy's arc is quiet but powerful, and the deeper sci-fi lore, Project Zero Dawn and the AI subroutines, elevates the story well beyond the typical genre fare. From a 100% perspective, this is a clean game to complete. Quests are well logged, collectibles have purpose, systems interlock. It respects your time more than Forbidden West ever does. Zero Dawn lacks spectacle but offers more control. It invites you to master its world, not just to ride through it. Deus Ex Mankind Divided is the most technically refined entry in the series, and arguably the most constrained. Where Human Revolution aimed for globe-spanning conspiracies, Mankind Divided confines itself to a single, densely layered city, and in doing so it perfects the immersive sim sandbox, but loses sight of the bigger picture. Prague is one of the best designed urban maps in the genre, multi-tiered, reactive, and packed with hidden entrances, alternate paths, and emergent encounters. Whether you're sneaking through sewers or hacking your way through penthouses, the game constantly rewards curiosity and builds diversity. Combat is flexible, stealth is viable, hacking is deep, and augmented layouts can dramatically reshape your approach. This is where the Deus Ex formula peaks in terms of its mechanics. Narratively, unfortunately, it stumbles. The plot feels like a first act without a second. Major threads are introduced and abandoned. Characters fade in and out. The Illuminati looms but never strikes. It's polished setup without meaningful resolution. For completionists, it's mostly a dream. Side quests are rich, outcomes vary, and Prague evolves across time cycles. Secrets are everywhere. The only downside is that its payoff never truly lands. It ends right when it should escalate. Mankind Divided is colder, smarter, and more deliberate, and much easier to 100% without fatigue. The Outer Worlds is Obsidian doing what Obsidian does best. Smart dialogue, reactive questlines, and moral ambiguity wrapped in a deceptively bright coat of paint. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it does bring clarity and sharpness to a genre often obsessed with size over substance. The game isn't truly open world, more a series of large, semi-open hubs, but the scale works in its favor. Each planet is dense, focused, and thematically distinct. From corporate-controlled Terra 2 to the anarchic monarchist mess of Monarch, every location supports the game's central critique of capitalism with both satire and sincerity. Combat is passable. It's not the main draw. Weapon variety is decent, and companions provide support and build flexibility, let you lean into stealth, persuasion, or raw firepower. But most encounters are over quickly, and the enemy AI won't keep you on your toes. Narrative reactivity is excellent. Factions, alliances, dialogue checks, and character backstories all feed into how your choices shape the outcomes. It's not as deep as a New Vegas, but the DNA is still visible. 100%ing the Outer Worlds is surprisingly breezy. Most achievements are tied to choices or builds, encouraging replays without punishing grind. There's little filler, just clean reactive content. The Outer Worlds is less intricate but more warm-blooded. It's not the biggest RPG here, but it's one of the easiest to recommend. This is the game that brought Deus Ex back from the brink, and it still stands as one of the most successful reboots in gaming history. Human Revolution may not have the complexity of its original counterpart, but it nails the tone, structure, and systems that make immersive sims sing. The world design is segmented but deep. You'll spend most of your time in Prague and Hengsha, each layered with hidden routes, NPC stories, and secrets. There's no open world here in the traditional sense, but the density of content makes each hub area feel like a microcosm of system design. Combat is built around player expression. Whether you're going non-lethal, stealth, or full auto chaos, the game supports your approach. Augmentations meaningfully shift your playstyle, and environmental tools reward curiosity. The only real blemish is the boss fights, outsourced, awkward, and tone-breaking. Narratively, Human Revolution strikes the right balance between cyberpunk cynicism and personal drama. Jensen is iconic. The themes of transhumanism, corporate control, and agency are front and center, and they do land. From a completionist view, this is where Deus Ex shines. Every side quest matters, every apartment is worth searching, dialogue choices often affect outcomes, and it's tight, rewarding, and replayable. Metro Exodus is a departure, literally. Leaving behind the claustrophobic tunnels of Moscow, this third entry in the Metro series stretches its legs with semi-open world regions across post-apocalyptic Russia. The result is a game that doesn't just evolve the formula, it elevates it. The world is bleak but beautiful. Each region, from the snow-blasted Volga to the irradiated Caspian Desert, feels handcrafted, distinct, and atmospheric. This is not an open world full of icons. It's a survival journey, and exploration feels purposeful. Resources are scarce, encounters are tense, and traversal is slow, but every detour tells a story. Combat is deliberate, weapons jam, ammo is precious, and mods can be swapped in the field. You're not meant to blaze through enemies, you're meant to survive them, or avoid them altogether. Stealth is viable, but not easy, and tension never breaks. Narrative delivery is subtle. Artyom remains silent, but the world speaks volumes. Your companions react to your choices. Kill too freely and you'll lose them. Spare enemies and the ending changes. It's reactive without screaming it. 100%ing Exodus is about exploration and discipline. Collectibles are well placed, and optional stories add texture. The open world-ish type structure really does suit the setting, and I'm very much looking forward to what they bring next. Fallout 3 was the first to bring the wasteland into full 3D, and it still holds up surprisingly well. Its shooting is clunky, its storytelling uneven, but its world, broken, haunted, oddly hopeful, remains unforgettable. The Capital Wastelands is an open-world playground of ruins, side quests, and emergent wilderness. You'll stumble on vaults filled with sociological experiments, stumble upon enslaved ghouls, or find a Republic of Dave election mid-fight. Exploration is the point, and it pays off constantly. Combat is serviceable. The VAT system carries the moment-to-moment flow, making up for the jank gameplay with cinematic gore. Buildcraft is shallow by today's standards, but the special and perk systems still let you roleplay in distinct ways. Narratively, it swings big. The farther story arc works on a thematic level, even if its beats are telegraphed. And the morality system is simple, but impactful. It's not subtle, but it's effective. From a completionist angle, Fallout 3 shines. The map is packed, achievements reward full discovery, and side content like the Pit, Point Lookout, and Broken Steel expand the world meaningfully. Unlike Exodus, which is more curated, Fallout 3 lets you get lost. It ranks this high because of that sense of freedom. Few games reward curiosity like this one. After all of its updates, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the most immersive open world games ever made. not because of the sheer breadth of its content, but because of the density of its world building. Night City is a living, breathing organism, teeming with detail and mood. Completing everything here means pulling apart each district, unearthing side gigs, cyber psychos, hidden cars, lore shards, and branching narrative outcomes. It's a rare case where the journey through every piece of content feels like it matters. The 2.0 update and Phantom Liberty expansion radically overhauls its systems, making the full completion experience feel polished and deliberate. Build crafting becomes the main attraction, and it's excellent. Cyberware loadouts, unique relic trees, and tactical implants give every encounter a personal flair. Hacking-focused stealth runs are just as viable as brute force melee or smart weapon assassination sprees. Narratively, it's character-driven epic disguised as a shooter. Pan Am, River, Judy Carey, and of course Johnny Silverhand, each storyline is rich with emotion and choice. The endings also feel earned, fully earned. This said, the open world isn't without flaws. NCPD missions are formulaic, car handling still isn't too great, and the illusion of a living city does break occasionally. However, the completion loop does remain deeply satisfying because of everything connecting back into a cohesive identity. Dystopian survival, identity crisis, and personal legacy. Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't just feel like you're seeing everything, it rewards you for wanting to, and that is rare. No game captures the essence of open-world RPG design like Fallout New Vegas. It's not the most technically polished, sure. It doesn't have the flashiest combat or the largest map, but it is without question the most reactive, most flexible, and most rewarding game to fully complete. Everything is built around choice, not just binary good or evil toggles, but real choices. Faction allegiances, ideological alignment, role-playing tone. You can be a mercenary, a diplomat, an anarchist, a pacifist, a terrorist, and the game will recognize it. The world shifts, dialogue adapts, and endings diverge dramatically. Combat is the classic Bethesda jank, tuned by Obsidian's mechanical know-how. Guns feel better than in Fallout 3, and builds have a sharper identity. You can spec for crits, sneak attacks, melee rushdowns, or full-blown explosives, and the perk system, including the best-in-class DLC perks, support experimentation. The Mojave is brown, yes, but also dense with character. Every NCR outpost, Legion camp, and independent town has a story. The DLC content in Dead Money, Honest Hearts, Old World Blues, Lonesome Roads is also exceptional, each one expanding the narrative and mechanical sandbox. From a 100% standpoint, this is the gold standard. Achievements are tied to meaningful decisions, side quests enrich the world, and every corner of the map holds something worth finding. Fallout New Vegas isn't just the best game on my list, it's a blueprint for what open world RPGs should strive to be. Player agency, systemic depth, and a world that remembers what you did and who you are. And that's my list, 31 open world sci-fi games 100% completed. Some were incredible, others exhausting, but all of them showed what happens when a game is built or not built to reward total commitment. What matters wasn't size or spectacle, it was structure, depth, and respect for the player's time. Some gave me freedom, others gave me filler, and a few games gave me something I'll never forget. If you've got your own list or think I've got something wildly wrong, let me know in the comments down below. I'll be reading all of them. Now, thank you for watching, and until next time, stay nerdy.